This is the Brain, and you're listening to the Geekcast Radio Network. Yes!
It's time for the Telecast, brought to you by
the Geekcast Radio Network.
It's time for the Telecast. Get ready for a blast from the past. We're talking classic children's TV shows that we watched over 20 years ago. It's time for the Telecast, so sit back now and relax with your host Optimus Solo from the folks at Geekcast Radio. It's gonna be geeky to the max, so let's get you to the Telecast.
And here is your host for the show, Optimus Solo.
Hello, as he said, I am your host, Optimus Solo, and I would like to thank you all for joining me for this special edition episode of The Telecast. Today we are giving you the first of our 6 supplemental episodes. The supplemental episodes are basically our chance to take a relaxed look at the entire genre we're covering in Season 1 without having to break down any particular show, and each one of these supplemental episodes will have a specific topic. The topic for this first one, or episode 5.5 as we're going to label it, if you will, is characters you would want as your best friend, or to put it another way, characters you would want to hang out with. The only criteria here is that they had to appear in a kids live-action show sometime in the 80s or 90s, basically. It's kind of a loose criteria, but that's what we're going with. And with me to help on this episode, making his Telecast debut, even though he's been on a few of the other Geekcast radio shows, is JT from Saskatoon. Hello, sir.
How you doing today?
I am doing good. I'm excited for our first supplemental episode. See how this goes. It could be interesting.
I got a couple on here I think you might enjoy.
Nice. And basically the way this is going to work is each one of us has come up with our own list of top 10 characters for the topic. And we're basically going to go back and forth alternating as we make our way through our list down to our number 1 choices. So, I think unless you have anything to say to preface your list, we'll get right into your number 10 choice.
Okay, well, the one thing I'm going to say about my list beforehand is there are at least 2 on here that I'm going to geek out on, if you will, because it's just like, this is so awesome.
Well, if you can't geek out on the Geekcast Radio Network, I don't know where you can.
Well, yeah, but I had to do some regressive hypnotherapy to go back to remember, who did I want as my best friend, that sort of thing. Yeah. And believe me, when I get to my number 1, I'll just be sitting there and just giggling. But yeah, well,
I'm very interested to see who's on your list, and after I came up with my list and see who I missed and all that.
I will preface my list by saying there are 2 ties.
Okay.
There's one of them that's can't decide between the 2, but basically. So, my number 10 is Beakman from Beakman's World.
Interesting. I thought about it for a second, but I didn't think of. Go ahead. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on Beakman.
Well, I grew up I saw a little bit of Mr. Wizard. I always thought Mr. Wizard was kind of cool, and don't get me wrong, I love Bill Nye. Bill Nye's my boy, but I think it was I was just 14 when I first found Beakman on the bounce. I live in western Canada, and I could get a CBS station from North Dakota sometimes on the old antenna rotor system. You have to dial the thing in like a safe. So I got to watching Beakman. I always thought it was a really cool show because he mixed the comedy with the actual science, and it's kind of the basis for how I learned things later on in high school. Is you had to make it fun before I would pay attention and remember it. And Beakman I always loved Beakman. I liked Lester the Rat, although I think I I think I preferred it when Lester was a puppet and became like this fat dude in a suit.
Yeah.
But no, Beekman was always funny, and he was, he just looked like absolutely insane, and he made you want to learn science.
And he'd probably be someone that would be fun to hang out with because he would know all kinds of different little tricks or experiments that would be cool for a kid to take part in.
Well, exactly. I mean, growing up, I always wanted to be like a mad scientist, mixing stuff up in the lab and taking over the world. And
brain.
Let's face it, of all the Saturday morning science dudes like that, I think Beekman had the best chance. I mean, he was half a supervillain already. So.
Yeah, he had the look for it.
Yeah. But no, I really liked it. I mean, it was also part of the show. It was like it was very vibrant. You look at the show; it's like a lot of color. The sets looked like an actual lab, like where all this stuff's going on. And he just seems like, what? If I want to have some fun hanging out with a buddy, I want somebody that can make some stuff up and we can cause some trouble. So.
Well, my number 10 is very similar in some ways and very different in others, but my number 10 is Pee Wee Herman from Pee Wee's Playhouse. Now, I know he got into some trouble later on, but we'll put that aside. If we're just going on who he was when I was a kid, he was this guy, as far as Pee Wee's Playhouse went, where it just looked like that would be all kinds of fun if you showed up at his place with all his different guests and friends and whatnot, where he knew how to have fun. He was that kind of wacky, crazy, you don't know what to expect, but there's going to be high energy and you're going to probably get yourself in trouble. Like I said, I'm discounting his real self and the actual actor and what happened later. But if you just were someone who watched Pee Wee's Playhouse, that looked like somewhere fun to spend a Saturday. So yeah. I know it's kind of crazy. It's probably my strangest pick out of my top 10, but I can't think of anyone else who had the amount of fun that Pee Wee did in his play, in his show, in his environment, in his playhouse, and he had all kinds of weird characters that would show up, like the cowboy guy, and just all kinds of different personalities that would show up, and it just seemed like that'd be kind of fun to be a part of.
Yeah, because I think my favorite part of the show was when the King of Cartoons showed up.
Yeah.
And it's like this old dude walks in, and he's like, I am the King of Cartoons. And as a kid, you're like, you command cartoons? Awesome.
Yeah. So that's my pick for number 10.
Yeah, you got to remember, like, for those that don't remember Pee-wee's, that was one of the first major acting things for Morpheus from The Matrix.
Yep.
Mr. Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah.
And he was one of the years later.
The cool characters on that show for sure.
Yeah, well, years later when I realized who that was, I was like, holy crap. So, but I guess just to move it along here, my number 9, and probably one of the first TV crushes that I will willingly admit to, is Clarissa from Clarissa Explains It All.
Ah, good choice.
Yeah. It's because when I didn't quite have a satellite dish when I first came into contact with Clarissa, like early 90s. My dad was part of the Lions Club, which is kind of like the Shriners. And we'd go down to this international convention in Minot, North Dakota, and it was around the time that SNCC was starting.
Okay.
And, we're sitting in on a Saturday night, and we're like, me and my brothers are like absolutely obsessed with Nickelodeon. And the show came on, and I was like, okay, this seems interesting. She's breaking the fourth wall like Zach from Saved by the Bell.
Mm-hmm.
And I thoroughly enjoyed the show, and then over the years that I watched the show, I was kind of like, you know what? I'd like her,
She seems like the ideal person to be, like, if you had to pick, like, if you're a guy and you had to pick a girl to be a friend or someone that you were going to hang out with, regardless of if you had feelings for her or not, Clarissa seems like the cool person to hang out with.
Yeah, because, she was smart, she was funny, she had some attitude.
Right, but she could get along with guys just as well as she could probably get along. She probably got along better with guys than some of the girls on the show.
Well, yeah, no, that was the whole thing, that she was just this very, I want to say bubbly, but she had like this. She had a personality that you just couldn't help but like her. Like, she was really energetic and she was really honest, and I really enjoyed that about her. Plus, she wanted to smack around her brother, and who doesn't want to smack around their younger brothers now and again?
Yeah, exactly. No, I very much like that choice. My number 9 is actually from the show California Dreams. And it is the character that was called Jake Summers on that show. Now, California Dreams obviously was not as popular as some of these other shows, so some people might not even know who I'm talking about. But Jake Summers was California Dreams is a band, a teenage band, basically, and it's like a Saved by the Bell, but it's this California teenage band group, basically. And Jake Summers was a character that was introduced in the second season, and he's kind of like one of the main guitarists. At some points, he's the main singer. He's kind of the tougher guy in the group. He was a little bit bigger, a little bit more muscular. He always seemed like he had like the leather jacket or the cool jacket on or whatever. And
he was the bad boy.
Yeah, he was kind of the bad boy. But the main reason I picked him is because of how much he valued his friends and the other band members. I remember at the end of that show, when it was done with its run, I think it only was around for about 3 seasons. So at the end of that last season, a lot of the band members were getting to the other stages in their life where they were going to go off to college or they were going to move to a different, state or country or whatever and kind of move on with their life. And he was actually offered a band gig by some producer, et cetera, that was in the episode. And at first he turns it down because he doesn't want the band to break up. He doesn't want to lose his friends. He wants them all to stay together. And I know that's kind of that moment in everybody's life where they kind of have to decide to grow up or move on. But I just thought it was very cool that he valued all the other band members and the friends so much that, number one, he would turn down the offer, and number two, he was going to great lengths to try to keep his friends, together and as a group, and I kind of respect that.
No, that Jake was always a guy that I really liked on the show, but I think, to actually moving along to number 8, my number 8 is also from California Dreams.
Oh, how funny that worked out that way.
Yeah, synchronicity. But my number 8 on California Dreams is actually Tony Wicks, the drummer of the band.
Okay.
Because I like Jake, and I was going to go with Sly, because Sly I really like too, but Tony just seemed like a little more... I want to say down to earth, but he was one of those guys. He had a lot of energy. He was a really nice guy. He was funny. He could sing. He could dance. Probably learned a thing or two from him in that regard. But right. I think overall and I'm not knocking like Matt, or Mark Winkle, like Sly's cousin or Jake. It's just he seemed the easiest to get along with, the friendliest guy. And I really liked that about the character. Like, he was always there with a smile and a wink and a nod. And
yeah, I can see that.
He was a drummer. And when it comes to bands, I've always been partial to drummers before guitarists.
There you go. He was also a little bit crazy, which would make for kind of fun. I'm not crazy in a bad way, but crazy, like you said, with energy and...
Yeah, he's just like completely off the wall some days, but he always had that, like, he played like he was like a really smooth character, It's like, I got this, and then he would like completely lose his crackers.
Yeah, but he was the type of person where if you were hanging out with him, you both wouldn't be sitting around bored, like trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
He would know what to do, or he would be figuring out something or keeping the energy high so that you would never be bored.
Yeah, if you're trying to pick up girls, he's like, dude, go talk to her. And I'd be sitting there. It's like, no, I don't want to do that. And he'd probably be the type to like, dude, go talk to her.
Yeah. My number 8 kind of takes a different direction here. We're going old school with, actually, you had mentioned you have a few ties. I actually have this is my one tie on my list. And it's from the long-running Nick show, You Can't Do That on Television. And I know, again, like I've said for a couple other ones, this would be one that if you weren't around in the earlier days of Nickelodeon, you wouldn't remember. But this was me and my sister's one of our favorite shows. But there's 2 characters that appeared on You Can't Do That on Television. One was Adam Reed, and the other was Alistair Gillis. I couldn't really decide between the two of them because they both kind of played similar parts. One was a little bit older than the other, but the reason I put them on my list is because they were very much like I was when I was that age. And what I mean by that is they were smart enough to know what to say and when to say it, but also to know where that line was. And they were also a little bit of smart asses. And, you know, they would get out of things. They would, I don't know, you'd have to be familiar with the show, but there was certain skits where they would get out of whatever the parents or the adults were trying to do to them, or in school they would, you know, try to get out of whatever the teacher was making them do. So they were the type of people I would want to hang out with in that, only when I was that age, because when you're in that age, you're kind of a little bit rebellious. Not necessarily going, you know, doing drugs or doing that kind of rebellious stuff, but you're pushing the limits of authority and stuff like that. And they just kind of did it in a good way without being complete jerks. So I kind of just like watching the little skits that they did on You Can't Do That on television.
No, I remember the show, but the character I remember the most from that is Barth, the cook in the cafeteria. But no, that was like the kids in that show always seemed like a lot of them seemed like they'd be fun to hang out with. So
yeah,
memories are.
They definitely pushed the authorities and kind of didn't, you know, they did what most kids do and stand up to adults, and that was kind of cool.
That they went through a metric ton of that green ooze.
Yes, but if you're interested in more on that, stay tuned for that episode of You Can't Do That on television, because there's going to be some fun stuff talked about then.
Oh, yeah. So, I guess moving along, number 7 is, for a kid, at the time, I thought he would be one of the coolest guys to hang out with and have as a friend, is Mr. Ernest P. Worrell.
What show is he from?
Well, hey, Vern, it's Ernest.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I wasn't making the connection at first because I heard you had said his whole first name. I don't think I've ever heard it referred to as that.
And unfortunately, like I know, in the years since I've caught like clips of the show on YouTube. I never actually got to watch that show as a kid. Mm-hmm. I knew him more from the movies like Ernest Saves Christmas, Ernest Goes to Camp, Ernest Goes to Jail, which is my personal favorite, because it has the line at the end of it, I came, I saw, I got blowed up. But and watch through the show, it's just, again, Ernest is one of those guys, he's just got this crazy amount of energy. He's always friendly, he's always got a smile and a joke, and he just seems like the type of guy, he would go out of his way to make you smile if you were frowning. Yeah. And I'm not saying I didn't know people like that growing up, but he just seemed like one of the guys you would never be sad hanging out with Ernest.
No, not at all.
And it's just, you look, and again, it kind of goes back to Beekman, that you see in his movies, you see in the show, he's always has like these insane contraptions. Like you look in Ernest Goes to Camp, where he basically like goes MacGyver. He's MacGyver without being that awesome. But, you look in the Ernest Goes to Camp, he builds the battle bus for like the take on the construction guys at the end of the movie. Ernest Scared Stupid, he turns the treehouse into a freaking armored fort, more or less, with like milk cannons and yogurt slingers and all that. But again, like that's all cool, but it's kind of besides the point. It's kind of like Tony from California Dreams. He's just a genuinely nice guy that you can't help but want to hang out with, and you're always going to have some fun with him. And sorry?
No, I definitely agree with you, and I actually thought for quite a while on including him on my list. He didn't make it in the end, but no, I can definitely see where you're coming from.
Yeah. It's just, again, like he's one of those guys, like for me, a friend is someone you want to hang out with because he's a nice guy, not because you can get anything from him or,
right.
It's just, he just seems like a nice guy. It's like, how could you not want to hang out with him?
Yeah. You either want someone that's going to be nice and not do stupid stuff or, stab you in the back, or you want someone that's, high energy and a lot of fun, and Ernest had a little bit of both of those.
Yeah.
My number 7 is probably the most famous character on my list here, and for a long time I was going to have him way closer to number 1, but for my number 7, I'm going with the classic Zach Morris from Saved by the Bell. Now, there's reasons he's on my list. There's also reasons why he didn't make it up to the top couple. The reason he's on my list is because how can you not want to hang out with Zach Morris, first of all? I mean, he is always getting into something. He's always, has some scheme or some, thing that he's doing. He's in with the ladies. He's, it's not necessarily a jock, but he can relate to them. He can relate to all the different groups. So he just seems like he is the popular guy at school that everyone wants to hang out with. The only reason I don't put him higher on my list is because he's also probably a little too concerned with himself over his friends. Now, I know at different times in Saved by the Bell, he is concerned with his friends, and he does go out on a limb for them, et cetera, but you can just kind of get that feeling that if it's in certain situations, if it comes down to, like, let's say a girl or whatever, he's going to leave you in the dust and go for her. So that's kind of why I didn't put him all the way up at number 1, 2, or 3, but I definitely thought he deserved a spot on my list, so I put him at number 7.
Yeah, no, Zach was going to be on my list a little bit higher than where you put him initially. And eventually, I found somebody else that, I'm not saying I don't want to hang out with him, but somebody else that I wanted to hang out with a little bit more.
Yeah.
And, but no, Zach was always a cool character. I mean, he is a little bit, narcissistic much.
Well, that's the other thing is I kind of was Zach Morris when I was in junior high in some aspects, so I can relate to him a lot. But I was a little thinking that we were almost too much alike at that age that maybe we wouldn't hang out. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you don't hang out with that person that's so much like you or that's filling that same role. You usually butt heads with them. So that's why I wasn't sure I could put him any higher, because I was kind of like him in junior high.
There's really not much more I can say on Zach. I mean, he seemed like a really cool guy. He got the hottest girl ever.
Yeah.
Kelly Kapowski. And it's just, you know what? I can't hate him for that, I just can't.
Yeah, you can't hate the guy for that.
All right. So we're on number 6 now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, actually, from the same show,
we're doing this just for. I gotta say something for the record, folks. We don't know each other's lists. We're not meaning to back each other up so easily with the transition to the same show. So this is all coincidental. Yeah.
Like I said, number 6 from the same show was Screech Powers. Because I was like one of those guys in high school, or in school. I was a nerd.
Mm-hmm.
I was almost completely oblivious to how much I was annoying other people at the time. I didn't wear really loud clothes. I did not have a high-pitched voice. I did not have a Jufro. But I identified with the Screech because, I wasn't like one of the smarter guys. It's just I was one of those guys that was just oblivious to everything around him. I mooned after the girl. He just seemed like, again, he's a guy that just seems genuinely nice.
Yeah.
Like you would have no problem like making friends with this guy because he's just so friendly. And growing up, that was kind of my problem because, I went into a pretty small town, where we had like 3 grades in one classroom, like one row of desks is like grade 3, another one's grade 4.
Yeah.
Like that. And it was really hard once you know everyone in the school. Your social skills tend to atrophy.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying.
And when I went to high school, I met, some guys who were like that, they're a little bit off the beaten path. And Screech just, he was, not to speak blue, but the guy was batshit insane some days.
Yeah.
And
no, he was.
But again, I kind of like that you have friends who are nice and a little bit crazy.
Well, and the other thing you got to say about him is probably more than anyone we could possibly come up with, and Screech isn't necessarily on my list, but he's got to be one of the most loyal people that we could come up with. Mm-hmm. I mean, how many times does he do exactly what Zach wants him to do, or how many times is he there for Zach, or, comes through for him? I mean, there's very rare a time where he will confront Zach about something or be disloyal to him, so loyalty is huge.
No, and that's the other thing, that Screech doesn't matter how many times, he's just absolutely loyal to his friends.
Yeah. And that's a huge category.
Yeah, and you can even see that with Zach at various episodes where he realizes that, he's kind of screwed Screech over, and he's just like, oh, man, what have I done? Because he knows that Screech would never do that to him.
Right. Yeah, I think the only thing I wasn't convinced is in the vein of if I was in junior high, if I looked at it from this standpoint, if I was in junior high, would Screech have been my friend? That I'm not sure if he would have or if he wouldn't have. Obviously I'm somewhat nerdy myself as well, and I did have friends, that were fellow, geeky or nerdy in ways, but
yeah,
I'm not sure if he would have been the type of person I would have been friends with or not, just from his kind of off the wall, like you said, batshit insane stuff sometimes. But, if I had to pick someone that was going to be loyal to me, he'd be at the top of my list.
Well, yeah, and not to say that he was always insane. It's just when he comes running up with that shirt, that voice, he's generally got some science experiment that he's thrown together.
Or that hair.
And the hair, yeah. Oh, you cannot talk about Screech without mentioning the hair.
Right.
And I mean, especially later on, like where he came back from college and he was like vice principal to Mr. Building, and he had like the Jufro mullet.
Uh-huh.
And it's wow. That hair was epic.
Yeah, it was. My number 6 is kind of like my number 7. My number 7 obviously was Zach from Saved by the Bell. My number 6 is actually Ted McGriff from Hey Dude. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Hey Dude, Ted McGriff basically plays a role that's very similar to Zach. But the way that it's different is he's not quite, in my mind, as arrogant, maybe. That might not be the right word, but he's not as full of himself to me as Zach at some points is. Ted's the guy that if I was on a summer job or whatever, or if I was at that dude ranch, I probably would have hung out with him just because we would have had a lot of stuff in common. We would have both been interested in trying to hook up with different girls. We would have been, I can see myself because, I had summer jobs when I was, I worked basically from the time I was almost, 11 or 12. I had a job, and I've had one basically ever since. And I can relate to the whole playing practical jokes and being the one instigating the pranks at work and, playing games with people as far as, being bored at work and stuff like that. So I just think that there was just certain parts of me that would relate really well to him. Again, for the same reason I said with Zach, I'm not going to put him too far up my list because we do have almost maybe too much in common at some points. So there might have been times where we butted heads over a girl or something like that. But it would have been fun to hang out with Ted even a little bit more, I think, than hanging out with Zach.
Yeah, honestly, I'm going to have to let you go on that one because I never really watched Hey Dude.
Most people haven't.
Yeah. I know more about, Salute You Shorts than I do Hey Dude, so.
Yeah. What about your number 5 then?
Well, my number 5 is first of 2 ties on my list, and it's the duo and the show of Keenan and Kel.
Okay.
Now, like, anyone who knows Keenan and Kel, and if you don't know Keenan and Kel started on the Kids Saturday Night Live known as All That on Nickelodeon.
Right.
And eventually they became so popular that they graduated to their own, well, not even a spin-off, but, towards their last couple of years on All That, they started doing their own kind of sitcom called Keenan and Kel, and it's basically Keenan and Kel as like exaggerated versions of themselves. Keenan's kind of like a Zach Morris type, like he's a schemer. He's always trying to get one up on everyone. Mm-hmm. And Kel is kind of like Screech in that he's like absolutely insane and almost completely addicted to orange soda, which I must admit that I have a soda, addiction of my own. So
don't we all?
But yeah, no, and the show itself was kind of like one of the classic one-shot cameras. Here's a set, here's the scene, go to the next one. But the characters of Keenan and Kel is what I loved. Like I said, Keenan was kind of a bigger guy like myself, and as scheming as I try to be, I am not anywhere near the level of Keenan. Mm-hmm. But and Kel was just like really, free. He was happy. He was friendly. He was energetic. And they got into like so many crazy adventures on that show. Usually, like you couldn't help but see the differences, the similarities between Zach and Screech. But I mean, there's something about the way these guys, it doesn't matter what they got into, they always were in it together. They went through it together. And to me, that said, how could you not want to be friends with somebody who is like loyal like that?
No, that makes sense. Like I said, loyalty is always should always be a big characteristic that you're looking for when you're trying to pick out someone that you want as your friend or someone you want to hang out with. Keenan and Kel's kind of like Hey Dude was for you. I did watch it occasionally, I think, but I just didn't catch enough of it where I remember it. I would really have to do some digging and watching on YouTube to remember exactly what they were like. But I'll take your word for it on this one.
Yeah, no, and I mean the other thing about the show is like my dad loved that show because my dad, like, I'm addicted to Coca-Cola. My dad was like absolutely addicted to Orange Crush.
Nice.
So you see this kid dancing around like a 6-foot tall bottle of orange soda, and my dad's sitting there. You know what? He's all right.
Yeah, he's all right in my book. For my number 5, I'm actually going back to Saved by the Bell. And I'm actually going to go with AC Slater on this one, only because this is the competitor or the athlete in me, I guess, that would, I played 3 sports in high school, and I can just kind of picture him as someone I would have got along with in the sports arena type area. He was also, very cool. He was in with the ladies. He was a little bit of like the muscle guy, and I have this pattern of being friends with guys that are kind of strong and muscular. I don't know if it's because I grew up as such a tall and skinny kid that I needed someone to back me up. I never got in a fight or anything, but I tend to have friends both in, junior high, high school, and college that were a little bit stronger. So that's kind of why it made me think, I probably would have gravitated to Slater. I don't know. It's subconscious, I guess. But, he was also the cool kid that would come in and stand up to somebody else, like Zach Morris or whoever else was in the school. And, I kind of respect the person that's going to come in as the new kid and not be walked all over and not necessarily be the shy kid, but stand up for himself. And, I don't know. He was kind of, I know Zach was the popular kid, but Slater was kind of the cool kid. And I just would have thought it would have been fun to hang out with Slater.
Yeah, I mean, so you look at Zach and like he was called by Slater as Preppy. Mm-hmm. Which is probably one of my favorite nicknames on TV, just the way he's like, yeah, why did you shut your mouth there, Preppy?
Yeah, he did it very well. And I always kind of liked Mario Lopez, so.
Yeah. But, I mean, Mario Lopez, like, the way he played Slater was really cool. Like, he was a jock, but he was a friendly jock. He wasn't like the classic nerd.
Right.
Smacking people around. And he wasn't just a musclehead. He was a pretty intelligent guy.
Yeah.
And, I mean, but he was always friendly. Again, he's like one of those guys, he just had that really easy smile. He was always ready and willing to help his friends. And
he'd have your back.
Yeah, exactly. He's a stand-up guy, and how could you not want to be friends with someone that's, salt of the earth like that?
Right. Well, so how about your number 4?
Well, my number 4 is the second and final tie.
There we go.
On my list is the duo, the classic duo, dare I say one of the greatest duos in kids' entertainment television, Fozzie Bear and Kermit the Frog.
Oh, there we go.
Like, again, and to be friends with people, you kind of got to see a little bits of yourself in them. And I've always been like when I say sensitive, I don't mean emotionally sensitive. I've just been a really touchy guy growing up.
Yeah.
And I kind of saw a lot of myself in Kermit, because Kermit was just always running around with his head cut off. He was trying to run a business, run herd on all these clashing personalities, and a very overbearing girlfriend, and, and kind of the antithesis to his problems was Fozzie Bear, who was always smiling, always got a joke, not the best material, mind you, but he always had a joke going. And these guys, these two souls just kind of gravitated towards each other, and they're always there for each other. They went through tons and tons of crap together, but they never lost sight of the fact that, they're friends, and they're always there for each other, and it's just something about the camaraderie, like as bad as Fozzie's jokes were and as close to a nervous breakdown as Kermit was, they're always there to lend each other a hand and back each other up. And
yeah, and you definitely you just can't go wrong with Kermit or Fozzie. I mean, they're just such classic characters. They would be definitely cool. I thought long and hard about including someone on my list from either The Muppet Show or Sesame Street. I ended up not doing it. I was real close to including Snuffleupagus from Sesame Street, just because he was such a good friend to Big Bird. But no, I like that you put Kermit and Fozzie in there.
Yeah, no, it's like you go through all the permutations. You see him in the Muppet movies, the Muppet Babies. Since it's the season, I mean, they got the Muppet Family Christmas. I'll probably be watching 8 or 9 times before next week.
Yeah,
you just see what happens. Is like these guys have gone through. They have gone through more crap than I don't think any of us have ever gone, like, to treat them as real people. Like, they've gone through so much crap that I think lesser souls might have just, like, called it quits and, like, we'll hang out and have coffee sometime.
Right.
For all the crap that they've gone through in their lives together, they're still friends, like, almost 50 years later.
Yeah.
It's absolutely endearing to the fact that these guys can stay friends for so long. And
yeah, they've been through thick and thin.
Exactly, and that's why I would love to hang out with these guys. Not to mention you got access to everyone else in the Muppet universe. So
right. For my number 4, I'm doing another second character from the same show. This last time I'll do this, but I'm going back to Hey Dude. I know you didn't see the show very much, but there's another character called Danny Lightfoot on there, and he is not necessarily someone who I thought I would put on my list at the beginning. But in thinking more about it, Danny is the prototypical person that wasn't the popular kid. He wasn't the kid that was going to get all the girls. He wasn't a jock. He was actually more of an artistic guy, but the reason I put him on there is because he is so down to earth. He was a Native American on Hey Dude, Native American teenager. He is so down to earth and just the type of guy that would be there for you when stuff went bad. And I thought there was, I've had the guys like Pee Wee or whatever that I like because they would just be fun and high energy. I've had the Zach Morris and Ted McGriff because they were kind of the cooler kids, and I kind of can see, wanting to hang out with them. But Danny is a little different. He's that guy that would just be there for you through whatever trauma you're going through. He would give you advice. He's down to earth. He's not going to try to upstage you. He's not going to try to steal your girlfriend or anything like that. So I just wanted to get someone in my list that had those characteristics. So that's why I went with Danny on that one.
Well, yeah, it's again, I'll have to let you go on that because
right.
I never saw Hey Dude.
Now you have a reason to go watch Hey Dude. No, just kidding.
Yeah, well, eventually there's a few shows like Are You Afraid of the Dark? I was like, I don't think I ever really watched that show as a kid.
Yeah.
I watched more of sorry, getting off topic, I watched more Tales from the Crypt than I did Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Okay,
so.
not the opposite.
My number 3 is the first of 2 characters from the Power Rangers franchise.
Did he just say Power Rangers?
Holy, contributing to the delinquency of minors.
Mike, when he listens to this, is going to start cracking up at this point because he knows I despise the Power Rangers. But I can understand why a Power Ranger would make the list. I didn't think about it, but it makes sense.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, first, number 3 is Billy, the Blue Power Ranger from the first 3 seasons of Power Rangers.
Okay.
And Billy, again, like, he was a nerd, but come on, he was a nerd who was a superhero. This dude was like Peter Parker without having spider powers. He was a guy, like, growing up, and not to say that I was completely picked on and I was a complete, like basket case. But I found it, like, once I got into high school, I found it really hard to make friends. like through most of my first year of high school. Like I had the odd friend here and there, but I was pretty much a loner. And I kind of saw that in Billy. Like he had a lot of good friends. You know, over time I developed kind of a group like that. But Billy was the guy. He's shy. He could barely talk to girls. He was a really smart guy. He just didn't know how to express himself, and that's just kind of where I was. Like he seemed like a cool guy to hang out with. Besides the superpowers, being a superhero thing. Billy was just like, he was really honest and, you know, I don't want to say like forthright. He was just a dude who he was. There was no pretense. There was nothing, no skeletons in his closet. He was this guy who was like super smart, and he didn't necessarily know how to operate in society. And well, you know, I raise my hand if someone asks me if I'm anything like that. So.
No, it makes sense. I can't really speak much about it because I've never seen much of the Power Rangers, but, you know, I'll take your word for it, and I'll let Mike laugh in the background.
Yeah.
My number 3 is actually our first. I'm surprised this is the first time it's happened, but my number 3 is actually a duplicate of someone you already had on your list. So we won't go into a lot of detail. But number 3 is Clarissa Darling from Clarissa Explains It All. So I definitely agreed with you when you put her on the list. I have her a little bit higher just because I don't know. She just seems so cool. As far as someone you could hang out with, that there wouldn't be any tension, it would be completely relaxed. She would push you to do things that maybe you weren't comfortable with, but within reason. And just like you said when you talked about her, when you mentioned her on your countdown, you know, she's just a cool chick to hang out with. It wasn't like a chick that you necessarily, I mean, yeah, you might have had a crush on her at some points, but it wasn't like that was going to consume you and you couldn't get past it. You could be best friends with her and still be cool. So my 3 is a repeat of your number, 9 or somewhere in there.
Yeah. Well, my number 2 is a character you mentioned earlier, Mr. Snuffleupagus.
Oh, nice. Our brainwaves were thinking the same.
Yeah, it's just, like I said, man, you're thinking, I'm thinking, great minds, but...
Scary.
Yeah, well, I mean, Snuffy. And I never ever really called him Snuffleupagus. I just called him Snuffy.
Yeah.
He just, like, again, probably one of my all-time, if not my all-time number 1 favorite Muppet. And it's just because he seemed like such a mellow guy. I mean, he's hanging out with this, 8-foot tall talking bird. And it's just the way he talked, like, he had that really slow, like, how's it going? Like, and it just exuded like this very calming kind of effect, because the guy was, he was just a really mellow character, and he put up with a lot of crap, because I mean, for the longest time, no one believed he existed.
Yeah.
Existed on the show.
I freaking love Snuffleupagus. He was one of my favorite Sesame Street characters, and as a smaller kid, or smaller child, at the younger ages, for some reason, even though you wouldn't think you would relate to him because he's such a big, giant character, you would think you would relate to like a Bert or an Ernie or someone that was more human type size and looking, but no, I related to Snuffleupagus more than any other character on that show, I think, and I just really loved how much of a good, sweet, like, caring character he is. Mm-hmm. Like, you just get the feeling that he would do absolutely anything for someone that he cared about.
Well, yeah, and it's almost like he, I don't know how much you remember Snuffy, but it's almost like he didn't know how to lie.
Right.
It's just like he always told it like it is, and not in like a really brusque or obtrusive manner. It's just like, someone said, well, why are you sad? And it's like, well, my mom's going away. And it's like, well, you still have your dad, right? Like he just had this really simple logic about him.
Very innocent.
Yeah, very innocent, very simple logic that he wasn't stupid. It's just he didn't see any reason to worry about stuff that was beyond his control.
Right.
So he always had, like I said before, he just has this super mellow personality that you just kind of gravitated towards. And the dude was a freaking woolly mammoth. I mean, And it's just that you're just looking at Snuffy. It's like this giant furry beast with a trunk, and
yeah. How can you not want to give that guy a hug?
I know. I mean, it was down to the wire between him and Big Bird, and as much as I love Big Bird, I
you
love
made the right
Snuffy
choice.
more.
You made the right choice. My number 2 is actually going pretty old school on people here. I'm going to the show before Saved by the Bell. My number 2 is from Good Morning Miss Bliss. A lot of people probably don't remember that show. But this was the character that was basically Slater before Slater came along, and his name was Mikey Gonzalez. Now, he had very small parts of him that were like Slater. And mostly just from a physical, the way he looked, even though he wasn't this muscle-bound person, because we're talking about the junior high days of Saved by the Bell, so obviously all the kids are a little bit smaller. Mm-hmm. But he was kind of the friend of Zach Morris, but sometimes the one that would butt heads with him. But the reason I have him so high on my list, even though he's kind of more of an unknown character, is because he had all the good parts that Zach had, plus he wasn't as, like, his bad parts weren't as defined as they are with Zach. He wasn't so full of himself and you know, such a troublemaker. He knew the line a little bit more than Zach. He would always try to kind of pull him back a little bit, but he wasn't afraid to stand up to him at times. And he just seems like, when I picture who my friends were in junior high and maybe my freshman year of high school or even pre-junior high, like 4th and 5th grade, he would have been one of them. And so this is the situation where not just saying who I would like to hang out with, but that this kid would actually match up with some of the people I did hang out with. So that's kind of why I put him so high on my list. And he was just a basically cool character. It was kind of sad that he didn't go on with the Saved by the Bell crew. I mean, obviously Slater came along and he was probably, you know, more popular, etc. But I really liked Mikey from the junior high days.
Yeah, I didn't watch a lot of Miss Bliss. I didn't actually start what. I didn't remember the show at all before I saw Saved by the Bell, and it was years later on TBS where they would have fill-in episodes on Saved by the Bell, re-edited so that now, like, 17-year-old Zach would come on and intro a classic tale.
Yeah.
Like, I remember this one time, and they would flash. It's basically they would treated the Miss Bliss series as like flashbacks.
Right. Yeah, I liked it when they did that.
And I was like, that looks like a young Zach Morris. What the deuce? But no, I remember Mr. Gonzalez there, and yeah, he seemed like a proto Slater.
Yeah.
You know, that he wasn't as much of a.
Wasn't really a jock, but he was kind of. He had the similar look. He
filled that role. Yeah. You know.
Yeah, definitely.
But don't really know a lot about the character, but he seemed like a cool guy. So.
Yeah.
Well,
down to the. We should have I should have a drum roll here. Can we insert a drum roll? All right. What's your number 1?
Well, my number 1, I find it highly unlikely that you've have heard of this character.
Okay.
Or even the show that he's from. But it's a classic Canadian TV show that I watched growing up. It was The Hilarious House of Frightenstein, and my number 1 character to be a friend with is the main character, Count Frightenstein. Now, to understand where I'm coming from, the show itself is set in the mythical land of Frankenstone, Canada, which is like the unknown 11th province. Count Frightenstein is the 13th son of Count Dracula. He's been exiled from Transylvania for failure to bring to life his creation, Brucey J. Monster, who's like a Frankenstein creature. And in order to kill time until he brings the monster back to life, he has this castle in Frankenstone that's populated by like the Wolfman, who's basically a Wolfman Jack radio DJ. There's Bowana Clyde Batty, who's like this animal guy from like what do you call him? Goes on safari.
Okay.
Like there's all these goofy horror themed characters, and the whole show is built around a very educational prospect. Like all the segments, if they're not straight up comedy, they're teaching you something. And the reason I like the Count is, again, he's like, to use my earlier phrase, this guy was batshit insane. Like, he's running ostensibly an office/apartment building. He's trying to bring his monster to life. His assistant is this big, balding brute named Igor, who's almost completely incompetent. He's like Zach Morris in the fact that he's got all these get rich quick schemes, all these failed attempts to bring Brucey to life. But something about the energy and the willfulness of this character that I like, because I mean, literally, this guy's been exiled by his dad to another freaking country, but he's trying to make the best of it. He lives in a castle full of monsters. Now, when I was a kid and I was getting into monsters, this was the coolest damn thing I could think about. Yeah. I mean, the guy, Dracula's always been one of my favorite characters growing up. I'm a little more partial to Frankenstein for personal reasons, but Dracula was always one of my favorites. And Count Frankenstein, like, if you look it up, you can see the character, like, he's got this pancake green skin, the classic Dracula outfit. Wears like, Chuck Taylor's, like, Converse All-Star running shoes.
Nice.
And it's just something about this character. Like, the guy just looked like a complete lunatic.
Well, anybody that wears Chucks has to be cool.
Well, yeah. I mean, but this guy, he had a job, he had a career goal. It just, as a kid, he just seemed like the coolest character to hang out with. Now, again, I'm going to say the show is called The Hilarious House of Frightenstein. If anyone is at all interested in this show, look it up on Wikipedia, find the clips on YouTube. The DVDs are out there for some of the show. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of like, this is like my absolute favorite guy I wanted to be friends with as a kid.
I'll have to look it up and check this guy out.
Yeah,
for sure.
And again, like, the guy that played him on the show, Billy Van, did like 90% of the other characters on the show, which was cool as well as a little, trivia factoid. So
yeah, that's great. I'll definitely check him out, and one of the times when you're on one of the shows, I'll have to get back to you on what I thought about him. Let's see. Yeah, for sure. My number one, another drum roll here, is actually from the very first episode we did on the telecast, which is Salute Your Shorts. You had Count Frightenstein, I have Michael Stein. Michael, I did not expect to put him at the top of my list at all until I started really thinking about it and going through things. Now, Michael was one of the original characters on Salute Your Shorts, and eventually he gets replaced, which is when the show becomes an epic downward spiral failing thing. But Michael, to me, was the perfect combination of different things I look for in a friend. Now, number one, he had some of the same interests as I did. He was somewhat of a jock, but not necessarily like the uber jock. So I could have, played sports with him and related to him in that way. He was into the ladies. Now, he wasn't like a ladies' man or like the most gorgeous thing on the world that the ladies just like swooned over, but he was into girls and he wasn't awkward about it. So, we could both go check out girls or whatever. That'd be cool. But he was also very much down to earth. You had Bobby Budnick on the show and Donkey Lips trying to do all kinds of crazy pranks and create trouble. And at times he would get swayed into being involved with it, but he would usually be the one that kind of knew where the line was. He wouldn't necessarily cross it, or he would go about things in a little more smooth manner. And I just kind of appreciated that part about him. And I could just picture, being out at some type of summer camp, or being like, for example, Hey Dude, being on a ranch, or just being at school with this character and completely getting along with him. I just think, we would have had enough similar interests where we could have just talked forever with each other. We could have related to each other. And, I don't know how much you know Salute Your Shorts, but Michael just seems like the down-to-earth, cool guy that I'd like to hang out with. Yeah, and again, that's another Nickelodeon show that I watched it here and there, but the only thing I really remember from Salute Your Shorts is like this one, I don't know, it's just this one episode where they're doing like a Deep Throat sort of thing, and it's like the girls are like, thanks, Donkey Lips, and you see the outline of him, and he's like,
How'd they know it was me? Honestly, that's all I remember, so I'm going to take your word for it, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was just like Bobby Budnick was the complete troublemaker, and Donkey Lips was the big old, guy that was kind of his sidekick, and Michael was just kind of the voice of reason amongst the group, but he would still do stuff and get away with it, but he was just so much more intelligent or smoother about the way he went about things. So, that's kind of why I went with him. But hopefully, somewhere along the line, through the 19 people that we talked about, since we both had Clarissa on the list, hopefully there's someone that you related to, or as a listener, as someone that you might have liked as a friend, maybe some people we brought up that you wouldn't have even thought of, or maybe you have people that we completely missed or we don't have that you would have picked as your number one or at least on your list. So if you have people that we missed, or if you want to react to our choices and tell us when we're wrong or when we were right, please do that. That would be great to get some feedback and to kind of have a little discussion, on the website. You can just go to geekcastradio.com and click on the telecast tab, and you'll find the entry for Supplemental Episode 5.5, and leave us a comment and just kind of give us some feedback. I'm interested to see where you guys think we went right and where you think we went wrong. So that would be pretty cool. Do you have any, final thoughts on the creation of the list or on any of the choices or just anything in general?
I mean, there are, like, some of the characters crossed over, like, I'd love to hang out with Zach. I mean, I don't know if I really want to hang out with Pee-wee, because then it kind of goes to the whole, like, older guy thing.
Yeah.
And it's just, not to make it creepy, it's just, I liked Pee-wee, but I found him, he kind of taxed my weirdness limit growing up. Like, I love the show, and I wanted to have his house, but not so much if Pee-wee was there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But no, I mean, I'd definitely like to hear what other people, like, what are maybe some shows that neither of us really recalled at the time.
Yeah. Like,
what are some other people want to hang out with, reasons why? Because, I mean, you never know who's going to be your friend until they're your friend. So.
Right. And, of course, Mike, I'm sure, will leave some comments about how he's very happy that a Power Ranger made it on the list. But
I'm just saying that I almost put Tommy the Green Ranger on here, but, I don't think I could have hung with him as much as I could have with Billy.
That's it.
Get off my bridge!
All right. Well, I think that does it for our very first supplemental episode. I think it went okay there. I'd like to thank JT for being on it with me, and thank
you, sir.
Yeah, and thank everybody else for tuning in and listening to us here on the telecast. If you want to leave us feedback for the show, do me a favor and just listen to any other telecast show episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You get detailed information on how you can get in touch with us. The only thing I'll say is, you can find us on iTunes or go to geekcastradio.com and click on the telecast tab, and that's where I'm hoping that a couple people go to this show's page and leave some comments. But for now, we hope we succeeded in entertaining you, informing you, and most importantly, unleashing the geek in you on this special episode of The Telecast. And we hope that you will tune in for our next episode when we start up our second set of themed episodes with Bill Nye the Science Guy. For now, I am your host, Optimus Solo, with
JT from Saskatoon.
And we will see you for another episode in a few days of The Telecast.
Discover this.
Guys.
Ready.
Yippee-ki-yay, what? Like the cowboy TV.
Science rules.
Everybody look around, hear the sound, something special's gonna come your way.
Surf dudes with attitude,
Kinda groovy.
laid back move.
Marshall, Will, and Holly